the IRIS Bitesize resource Working Together in Adult Support and Protection. Over the course of this video, you'll hear all about working in partnership with adults who may be at risk. We'll also hear about how proactive work for people to participate can help improve outcomes both in the short and in the longer term. You'll hear directly from adults and carers who have experience of the adult support and protection system in Scotland, as well as messages from research and the wider knowledge base as to how we can make working together a reality. This video is a short version of the web-based 2022 IRIS Working Together in Adult Support and Protection resource, which is web-based learning that includes space for your reflections and lots of extra information. If you find this video useful, you may like to complete the full resource as well, and the link can be found below. The material from this video and the full resource is a full update of the 2011 learning materials Working Together in Adult Support and Protection, which was developed by Altram and the University of Stirling and was created in partnership with people who had been through the adult support and protection system themselves. This video is accompanied by 4 practical tools, which you can also find below. You'll be directed to look at these tools during various points of the video. These tools can be freely downloaded and shared, and they were all designed by the original Working Together group for direct use with adults at risk and their carers. They support participation, accessibility, and communication during the adult support and protection process. You are now going to hear from somebody who has lived experience of the adult support and protection system. Here she talks about why honesty and respect is so very important and how it can feel to have your personal choices discussed in front of you.
Honesty is vital, but professionals must also remember to do it in a respectful way and give us time to process what's been said. Sometimes it seems professionals become a little immune to the topics discussed in these meetings, but just imagine how it would feel for you to have your whole life laid bare, every choice and decision you've made in front of a room full of strangers. People can feel very judged, and just the fact that you're in that position can make you feel very unequal. Nobody else is having their private lives discussed publicly. So professionals need to remember to only share what's absolutely necessary and to do it respectfully and not in a way that causes unnecessary embarrassment.
If we look at the Adult Support and Protection Scotland Act 2007, we can see that professionals doing this important work should provide the adult with all the relevant information and support to enable them to participate as fully as possible in the process. But what do we mean by participation? Well, participation can mean many things, but in this resource we specifically mean that it is about ensuring that people who may be at risk are involved in their own care, support and protection. It means that any decisions made about them involve them, are discussed with them and are shared with them. It doesn't mean always doing what people want, but it does mean that we make a commitment to explaining decisions and understanding how those decisions affect the lives that people live. Participation is also about not making assumptions about what people want or what you as a professional think is best for them. It isn't just providing people with standard information either. It's about helping people to understand that information and think through what decisions mean to them in their own lives. There are several principles that research and experience has found that can help us when we think about participation. These are, number 1, being honest and open in all forms of communication. Number 2, being creative and accessible in communicating with an openness to different methods of working with people. Number 3, being prepared to invest time and energy into supporting participation. And number 4, and this is especially for senior managers, taking participation into account in strategy and planning. If you're a senior manager, you can also think about how you provide ongoing support for your frontline staff to support participation directly in their work. Participation also extends to those in a person's circle of support. The people in someone's life play a very important role in supporting someone through the adult support and protection process, and really in helping them to stay safe both now and in the future. Carers, friends and family may also have important understandings about how information can be made more accessible to the person that they love. Participation begins with listening, because if there's one message that runs through people's experiences, the legislative framework around adult support and protection, and the research, it's about listening. The more effectively you listen, the more likely you are to support the participation of adults and those who support them. Listening underpins so much of the work that we do in adult support and protection. It's a key part of professional curiosity, which is a vital skill in adult safeguarding work. It is professional curiosity that means you question and challenge the information you receive, identify concerns, and make connections to enable a greater understanding of a person's situation. Professional curiosity is about really having an interest in a person's story, remaining open-minded, and being prepared to have difficult conversations. On your screen now, you can see what people would like to see in a social worker. Most of these are about listening in some form or another, or about the worker being curious about their lives. For instance, people want to be able to talk about their hopes and dreams, not just about the difficulties they are facing right now. You can also see that people value honesty, patience, and open-mindedness. Why is this so important? It's because listening, really listening, is about building up trust. You're now going to hear the voices of 3 people who have cared for loved ones and all who have experience of the adult support and protection system in Scotland. Listen to them describe what's important in building up trust.
Oh, it would absolutely need to be do what they say that they're going to do. Be clear on the limitations of the support that they can provide, so you're not feeling let down by the system. You know what the boundaries are. Making links across the health and care system, and I know these are often highlighted as soft skills, but they're absolutely fundamental. Demonstrating that empathy, being respectful and non-judgmental.
Right. Well, I think it's very important that they listen to you. They're honest with you about what they're doing. They treat myself and my son, who acts as a support, as an individual, and that they see past labels, etc. And they're committed to providing a high level of care.
I think it's really important to just be honest and say, I might not fully understand what you're going through, but I can see how challenging it is. I'll do everything I can in my professional role to support you and your family through this. And I think it's just key for me is just being open and honest as much as you possibly can be, and doing what you say that you're going to do, and if you can't, making sure that communication's crux right through it.
I think it is. It's just about individual. I think it can't all just be a tick box exercise, and it can't all just, one doesn't fit all.
Well, I think it's very important from the start off that they build open and honest relationships, because that builds trust with the carer and the client and proves that they're listening. They need to be committed to providing a high level of care which meets the individual's needs and allows them to reach their full potential, even when it means challenging council policy. I've been very lucky that they've done that.
I was caring for my mother, so I'm a younger person caring for an elderly person. But I think, like in a lot of cases, I think about a husband caring for his wife, and I think, what happens to these people who maybe don't know what they're entitled to, and are they, I don't know, in the big picture, I think, you're looking at them and thinking, what happens to them? Because that wee man's not going to shout out. He's probably thinking that's just because old school are, honestly, like I work in a GP practice, and you'll have like somebody born in the year 2000 who has had a sore tummy for a day and they need an emergency appointment. And then you've got the wee woman that's born in 1928 who's had diarrhea for 2 weeks and bleeding and all sorts. And she's like, I don't want to bother you. So old school people, I think, probably need quite a lot of support as well, or people who just maybe aren't, or shyer, or I think that you have to gauge the situation of the carer and who they're caring for, and sort of gauge what they need.
You can see on your screen an acronym, FACE, F-A-C-E. It reflects 4 key things that people with lived experience say are important in building up trust. F is for flexible. Be flexible even if you are under time pressure to get something done. A is for ask. Ask for the person's point of view and make sure that you have understood it. C is for consider. You consider different approaches, including unusual and creative approaches that might work well for the person, rather simply taking a tick box approach. And E is for explain. You always explain clearly and answer any questions someone may have. This acronym came from people with lived experience themselves, and it reflects the things that are important to them. It's a really useful acronym to remember because it will help you keep the importance of listening right at the heart of your work. As we've already mentioned, one of the things to be aware of when thinking about participation during adult support and protection is that it comes at a time when people's ability or willingness to trust in people is often at a low point. This includes trust in professionals. Advocacy, therefore, can be a powerful way for people to feel that someone is on their side. This is because an independent advocacy worker supports people in having a stronger voice in the adult support and protection process. An advocacy worker can help people to understand their rights and to participate as much as possible in the decisions made about them. Advocacy workers don't offer their own opinions and don't judge. Instead, you can think of advocacy as a way to amplify someone's own voice. Watch now as Jackie Clayton, who's an advocacy worker with Partners in Advocacy in Edinburgh, talks about what an advocate does and why advocacy is so important in the adult support and protection process.
So advocacy is independent, and good working practice should ensure that everyone under adult support and protection has access to this service. In fact, under adult support and protection legislation, the Council has a duty to consider providing appropriate services, and that includes the advocacy service. And at this, we will support adults where an intervention under the Act is considered to be necessary. It's also about the person so that they are fully involved and they ultimately at the centre of any action that's taken or any meetings. It's about them and they should be a big part of it. An advocacy worker is non-judgmental. So no matter what we are told or during the referral, we do not judge on anything. We're primarily there to support the advocacy partner through the process, be with them and to support them if they want to attend case conferences. They're basically you would say we're basically on their side. We're there to make sure that their voices are heard, their side of the story is heard, and that their opinions are taken on board.
It's useful to know what the 3 principles that underpin independent advocacy are, as set out by the Scottish Independent Advocacy Alliance. Number 1. Independent advocacy is loyal to the people it supports and stands by their views and wishes. Number 2. Independent advocacy ensures people's voices are listened to and their views are taken into account. Number 3. Independent advocacy stands up to injustice, discrimination, and disempowerment. Making sure people are aware of what advocacy is and how they can access it is an important part of supporting people's participation. A concrete action you can take right now is making sure that you know everything you can about your local advocacy services. This includes being very clear on their referral process and feeling confident in explaining, in very clear terms, the benefits of advocacy to adults who may be at risk. A clear request from people is that the adult support and protection journey is clearly set out for them. The original Working Together group used the metaphor of a train going through a tunnel to explain how they felt when they began the adult support and protection process. At the beginning, it's important to help a person see that there is light at the end of the tunnel. Going through the tunnel itself may be scary and difficult, and a person will want to know how they are going to be helped to get through before they want to commit to stepping into that tunnel. The more choices a person is given, the more windows open in the tunnel and the more light gets in. If the process doesn't look so much like a tunnel in the first place, people feel that the journey is easier and getting to the light is achievable. In practical terms, this means that planning starts with open options rather than fixed choices. It also means that an adult at risk and carer are both able to keep track of the process on their own terms. If they can do this, they are in a better position to see if it's working for them and to ask for things to change if it's not. This is a good opportunity to now review tool number 1, which is called Steps Along the Path. It can be used in direct practice, helping everyone, including professionals, to keep track of the process, raise concerns and express their feelings, and to see clearly what steps are yet to come. It's designed to give a sense of progress and control through the tunnel of adult support and protection. Beginnings are important for everyone involved. You, as a worker, are likely to feel an urgency to establish quickly how serious the risks of harm are and all the possible factors contributing to this. But it's important too to remember the perspective of the adult at risk and carer. The first stage of adult support and protection involvement may come at a very distressing time for them. Thoughts about the harm or problem may not be at all clear to them, let alone being able to think about the bigger picture of how services may be able to help. Adults at risk may feel very defensive, as if their strengths, skills, or ability to cope are all being judged. In an initial meeting, it is important to establish the information upon which further action will be based. However, it's also important to work with the adult and carer in order to get them to think about 2 questions, both of which were suggested by the Working Together group. Question 1. What do you want to get across? Not just about the problem, but also about who you are and what you want to be. And number 2, what do you need to know or understand better about services? These questions will really help start the journey of adult support and protection on a note of respect and working together, and help the whole process feel less like a dark tunnel. Thinking about risk obviously runs through the whole of the adult support and protection process, but it's a complex concept. On your screen now, you can see a diagram called Squaring the Circle, which is a good visualisation of all the different things to weigh up when we think about risk. It helps us to think about risk not as an either-or concept, but as a spectrum. On the left, you can see that it says safety first, and on the right it says anything goes. We are unlikely to see risk at either ends of these extremes. As professionals, we don't want to leave people open to harm, and part of our job is to consider the likelihood of negative outcomes and think about how we might prevent them. But shielding people entirely from risk or curtailing their ability to take risks is a risk in itself and could run counter to promoting choice and control. Working together with the adult at risk, we have to work out where risk lay and how we might balance individual choice, public safety, rights and responsibilities. Because risk is so personal, working together with the person is very important. The complexity of a person's life, with all of its interlocking threads, means that there is often no simple action to reduce risk or to improve well-being. Uncertainty is inevitable. A positive way to think about risk is to balance it with a human rights approach. This doesn't mean accepting without question that all decisions that a person makes are the result of free choice, but it does mean getting to know the person, supporting them to exercise their rights, and understanding how best to support them to live a life of dignity and equality. On your screen now, you can see a key message from the Working Together group which gets to the heart of this issue. It is advice from adults who have been through the adult support and protection system and is given directly to adults who are currently at the start or in the middle of the process. It says, "You may feel like a victim, but you are a citizen with rights and abilities that mean you can get to a better place." It's important to hang on to this. Supporting people's knowledge of their own rights and building up their confidence in their own abilities is a very important part of working together in adult support and protection. Now is a good time to look at Tool 2. It is a risk assessment report cover designed by the Working Together project group. Many risk assessment forms can be intimidating. You might like to consider what your own looks like. They're often designed for what services need to know rather than what the person at risk wants to get across. This tool has been designed to be used alongside any standard risk assessment forms in your organisation. It's a way to make the process feel less confusing and scary to a person who may be at risk. It's not a replacement for a standard risk assessment, but it makes information for people and carers really accessible. The questions are designed to draw out someone's wishes, feelings, and support their participation in the adult support and protection process. Meetings such as adult support and protection case conferences are always about the safety and well-being of the adult at risk. Therefore, it might seem strange to talk about person-centred meetings when it seems obvious that the person is at the centre. However, professionals usually have tasks and processes to complete, and this can pull us away from the person being the entire centre of our work. So, when we talk about person-centred meetings, it means much more than keeping the person safe and foremost in our thoughts. It also involves taking the person's aspirations, preferences, and opinions as a starting point, rather than thinking about what services are available to them, for example. It also involves thinking about the person's family and friends. In other words, it's about making sure people have the opportunity and the encouragement to participate as fully as possible. In larger meetings with many different professionals, these kind of principles can be harder to stick to than when meeting one-on-one with someone. There can be the temptation for professionals to talk to one another and not involve the person, or to use jargon, often without realising it. Being aware of dynamics like these and challenging other professionals if they engage in them is very important to ensuring person-centred meetings. For instance, you could think about this scenario. Picture this. A social worker and an adult at risk have a good relationship. The adult trusts the social worker, who has worked hard to understand the person's story and aspirations. At a case conference, this social worker frequently turns to other professionals in the room, speaking about capacity. The person at risk and their advocacy worker question this, and the social worker apologises, turns back to them and explains what the professionals have been saying in plain language. The social worker carries on speaking to other professionals for the rest of the meeting, but from this point on always translates back to the adult at risk and their advocacy worker. Now consider for a moment how this scenario makes you feel and how the adult at risk might feel. Is this a true person-centred meeting? And do you recognise that scenario in your own practice? Working together starts in preparation for a meeting. Making sure a person is aware of what a meeting is for, the kinds of issues that will be discussed, and involving an advocacy worker as early as possible are all important steps to take. The adult at risk is likely to be nervous and will worry about being asked a lot of questions at the meeting. Doing this without preparation can feel really intimidating, so it's really important to support the person to prepare so they can feel more confident in their answers. Sharing your own practice knowledge and experience about the process, structure, and possible outcomes of the meeting will always be helpful to people. Remember, something that is routine for you will be a very unusual situation for non-professionals. A useful tool is now on screen, Tool 3. In preparation for a case conference, you can use this tool directly with an adult at risk and their carer. Start on the right-hand side in the sun with a person's goals, values and dreams. Then look at the left-hand column. This is about how a person problem solves, including their previous experience, things they are good at, and people who help them. When these parts have been filled in, the middle section should be easier to gradually complete together. You can now see a short extract from the Working Together group of James and his social worker Pat filling in the tool. You can see how Pat starts by talking to James about what he wants in his life, pulling out some of his key words while filling in the tool as they talk. She then moves on to think about how James problem solves, including the things he thinks he can do better.
Well, James, seeing as you said that it helps if you have a visual map to help you plan and organise things, and that you'd like to have one of those at the meeting, I brought one along, and I thought if we filled in a few bits of it, we could help introduce the plan we want to do at the meeting.
That's good, yeah, that's fine, yeah.
Okay, well, what I'd like to do first is talk about how you'd like things at their best, you know, what you hope for in life, your kind of values.
Well, I just want to be trusted as a valued family member, that the words I speak carry some value and everybody holds them. Okay, so one of the things that one of your values is being an equal member of the family.
A trusted person and equal member of the family.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, if we think about what you want in terms of how would you like things to be? What do you want to be out doing? How do you want your life to be? What are the things you're aiming for?
To get back to being confident enough to meet people that are not necessarily connected to my support, and be able to meet people on the street and be self-aware enough to be able to do it and be respected for it.
Okay. So I'm going to put there's a goal, being confident to meet people everywhere, not just And the other two words that sounded really important were self-aware and respected.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got a lot of good things here about times you have solved problems, and what you're good at, that you're patient, you know things are going to get better, you work through things step by step, you know how to use a diary, and there's some tools that you've used, the diary, the visual tools, and you've had good experiences working with people. There was the doctor that helped you move out, the mental health worker at the Mental Health Resource Center,
And
some
yourself.
of the mates. Okay, thank you. Let's talk a minute about the challenges. Or are there things you'd like to do better, that you'd like to use this experience to learn how to do better? Any things?
Well, I like to know more about how, I would have liked to know how the family felt.
Okay, so finding out how other people feel.
What at being a part of the family. I mean, maybe if I'd been in the loop in the first place, it would never have happened.
Okay, being aware of how other people feel in my family.
Yeah. And staying in with where the support is on the paper. I'd done a lot of things on my own, but none of that was going down in the support package. So maybe if I updated the support book as to what I was doing, and we worked to that and moved through the pages of the book instead of a solo effort. It might have been different for me. Yeah.
Okay, and those are things maybe we can work on, is making sure what I do matches what's going in the diary. Yeah. Those are some good things to know that you want to work on, and I know that the communication with your sister is one of the things that we want to work on. I just want to ask you, are there things that you don't want, or things that you find unhelpful when you're facing a problem?
I like things to be upfront, to know how many pages of the diary I'm going to be using, and the various topics. I mean, where people come from and supporting me. It's not good enough to know that just a member of the team. I want to know what the task is within the team. You know.
Okay, so I'm going to put under the things that help you, or things up front. Things you find unhelpful is when information isn't shared.
Yeah.
Okay.
You might observe how Pat pulled out important words for James, really listened to what he said, and supported him to understand his strengths, which she then repeated back to him. These principles can be easier to keep in mind during one-to-one meetings like in the video clip, but if we use a tool like this to prepare in partnership with the adult for that bigger meeting, it can really help us carry that ethos of working together through and settle nerves at the same time. Follow through on principles you have established at earlier stages, such as arriving on time, considering personal space, and bringing visual tools or easy-read materials. Trust built in informal settings and preparation can be lost if the tone of more formal meetings is all about process rather than relationships. It's important to make the meeting as relaxed as you possibly can. This includes opportunities for breaks that are built in from the start. Think about power here. An adult at risk may not want to ask directly for breaks, as they may be afraid to indicate that they can't cope. Instead, having pre-arranged breaks and a signal worked out in advance so the person can discreetly indicate that they need to take a break are all important support strategies. As well as making someone feel more relaxed, it can also increase a person's sense of control in the meeting itself. If there are lots of people in a meeting, this can really feel intimidating, especially if there are people that the adult at risk doesn't know very well. Sometimes this can be addressed in advance, where one person from a service can attend instead of two people, for example. But if that's not an option, think about the possibilities for smaller group work, for example. Clear points for action, emphasised throughout and summarised at the end, will help the adult at risk and carer understand what will happen next and what they can expect of others. After the meeting, it's important to allow a bit of time for a debrief. You can feed back to the adult at risk and carer about their strengths at the meeting. For instance, if they put their points across clearly, tell them. If they controlled their temper when hearing difficult things, let them know how much that was appreciated. Even in really difficult meetings, there will always be something positive that the person did. Arriving on time, staying until the end, listening to others' views even when they disagreed, being resilient, being tenacious in difficult situations, and so on. Really try to think about something positive that you can say to the person that they can feel proud of in the way that the meeting went for them. You can also encourage the adult and carer to feed back to you after the meeting. Ask them to comment on anything you did well and anything they think you could have done differently. Listen carefully to this feedback. It can help you understand the impact your work has and give you tips for the future. Essentially, the things that adults at risk find helpful in participation also applies to their carers, supporters and family members. This includes talking over their hopes and fears, clarifying issues about the process and ensuring that they have access to their own advocacy and support. Their experiences and personal history with their loved one helps paint a picture of that person's life. They also have an important role in encouraging the adult at risk to speak up about their own wishes and feelings. All of these things are important, perhaps especially so when a person at risk isn't able to be part of the meeting or chooses not to be. You're now going to hear from Michelle, who talks about the presentation she prepared for her mum's case conference. This, as she explains, helped her to get the facts clear and provide evidence about the neglect her mum experienced. Michelle talks about the information she had previously provided in the Getting to Know Me plan, which she had thought would be taken into account in her mum's care.
I made a PowerPoint and I got the Getting to Know Me, and everything that I put on it and that didn't happen, or, like I highlighted it yellow and transferred it on to it so that they were at the meeting, they were actually looking at. I asked you like the very, very small thing, but it was quite important because my mum didn't sleep for over a year, and we got her medication sorted out. But one of the things was she loves drinking loads of water and green tea. But we realised that the green tea, the caffeine in the green tea was maybe something that was triggering off her not sleeping. So we got her decaffeinated green tea. So at one of the stages, I had gave that into the care home, put her name on it, and I said, really, she has a sippy cup. You give her half cold, half hot green tea, and had like put that on, and that was one of the things that that was actually a very, very simple thing that they never followed, but still that's how intricate. Like I made the Getting to Know Me plan. I even told them like if you play with her hair, massage her hands, where she came from, what they talked, what she talked about, and all of them, it was just kind of, they just made it as if it was nothing. But I thought, well, if she had her decaf green tea, she wouldn't have been awake, or, they have to listen to, and actually I think a lot of people would need help. Like what would be a good thing as well for carers is to get help filling in, like the Getting to Know Me before. It didn't help me in my case, but I think if care homes were more aware to look at a Getting to Know Me, and if carers got support to write that out, because I don't think you do. I just knew about it and I had went on and I thought I'll put full details. It didn't help me, but hopefully, it could get highlighted to care homes to definitely use that.
Take a moment to think about Michelle's experience. She talks about several details that were important to her mum, but that were overlooked. Michelle included these in her presentation to the case conference. How do these details bring Michelle's mum into the case conference, even if her mum wasn't able to directly participate in the meeting? Dynamics between family members can be complicated, and when a person has been at risk, these dynamics may change in any number of ways. For instance, trust may need to be recovered. If a person has been harmed, carers, family members or friends may blame themselves for not keeping their loved ones safe. The person who has been harmed may also feel let down that family or friends did not do more to protect them. In other cases, bonds may be strengthened between people, part of the process in overcoming trauma together. People in the original Working Together project identified several things that may be helpful for carers and family members to do during and towards the end of the adult support and protection process. Number 1, supporting the person to review and plan following any meetings. Number 2, supporting the person to look at what is working well and not so well about the practicalities of putting the plan into action. Number 3, helping them to talk through losses that may have occurred through the process and ways to recover from these. And number 4, giving them the opportunity to take more responsibility and exercise more freedom if, during the process, this has been curtailed. As a professional, you may find it useful to discuss those points with family members and ask them if they need any support in supporting their loved one in this way. In the adult support and protection process, there is a lot of emphasis on identifying risk and taking action to end that risk. There is usually much less emphasis on the next steps of helping a person live their life afterwards. However, this is important if a person is not to end up facing risks again and again. It's really important that the person is given support and opportunities to reflect on how well the plan from the case conference fits for them. Feelings of empowerment and ownership of the plan, rather than feeling that it is something being done to them, are all important. 2 of the tools we have already looked at can be helpful to consider again here. Tool 3, on your screen now, draws out problem-solving approaches and was used when we were thinking about preparing for a case conference. Now the tool can be looked at again. How can these problem-solving approaches be used to put the plan into action? What are the person's strengths and how can they be used to keep them safe in the future? Tool 1 can also be useful to revisit when we think about supporting people to get on with their lives. This tool allows the person and carer to look back on the process, evaluating if there are any unaddressed concerns and reflecting on the journey. This tool itself can, eventually, be part of that person's own story, to reflect how they have worked with professionals to emerge from a harmful time and eventually supporting them to regain a sense of self. This is all part of taking a trauma-informed approach while remaining positive that the future can be better. Think now about how the person may see themselves. They have just experienced harm and have now gone through the system of adult support and protection. They may want to reinvent themselves after a difficult and traumatic experience. They may feel optimism about the future, and they may feel sadness for things that they have lost. They may feel a lot of different emotions at the same time. For most people, living with constraints and lifestyle changes takes time and needs support. Grieving loss, including the loss of an established way of life, can be a long process. You could think back here to the important quote from the Working Together group. You may feel like a victim, but you are a citizen with rights and abilities that mean you can get to a better place. It's important to hang on to this. Following a difficult experience, that better place should start to come into view for people. The Working Together group also devised some questions that they felt it would be helpful for workers to discuss as the adult support and protection process comes to an end. These are: has the investigation thrown up barriers between the person who was at risk and those who are important to them? How can these relationships move forward? Is extra support needed to stay on any new path that has been developed? What has the person learned from these difficulties that could be useful to them in the future? We can now look at tool number 4 called Where From Here. This is a brief tool that can be used with someone as you end your work with them. It can help them to think about the things that are important to them for their own future. Things I want to do relates to what the person sees as key actions now that they have been through the adult support and protection process. Usually the person will be able to do these things themselves or with family and friends. The What I Want to Do with Organisations section relates to how the person sees their ongoing work with services. This will be different for everyone, but might, for instance, include making sure I am confident in my rights, and if I don't know, I'll ask, or connect with an organisation that supports the voice of people with learning disabilities. And finally, what I want those who represent me to do relates to messages that the person would like services to hear, such as involve us in making policies and procedures, or don't make decisions without getting to know us first. It's important to hear these messages, and you can take these back into your practice. Supporting participation is like giving people a set of keys. These keys can then unlock different strengths and resiliencies for them during a really difficult time. People have a great deal of ability to solve their own problems, even if their self-esteem and faith in this ability is at a low ebb due to their recent harmful experiences. Through trust and patience, participation can help keep people safer in the future and, crucially, on their own terms. In fact, participation in people's own support and protection in itself can be a powerful boost to people's self-esteem. For some people, this may mean that they're keen on making things better for others in a similar situation. After all, the Working Together group was made up of people like this. They had all been through adult support and protection and wanted to help others in a similar situation. Therefore, as a final thought, you may want to consider participation in its widest sense. This is where people make a valuable contribution to shaping policies and services in the future. Think now about your own organisation. Are there any meetings or conferences where someone who has been through the adult support and protection system could offer their opinions on improving services? Are there policies that they can comment on? Are there any creative ways to bring the professional and non-professional perspectives together? What would you need to do to make this happen and to make it a positive experience for the adult or carer? Thanks for watching this resource on working together in adult support and protection. If you wish to access the full online learning resource with additional material and spaces for your own reflections, you can find the link below. And good luck with your important work in supporting and amplifying the voices of people in the adult support and protection system in Scotland.